It's off to Irving in the corner. It's a three. Good! 2-1 for Doncic. Works by McDaniels, who's got to be careful. Spins, fades, fires, hit. Irving and Edwards. Towns will pick him up. Backpedals. Long shot! Conley will plummet into the paint. Knocked away by Gafford. Third block. It's Dallas's ball.
Boy, Gafford is emotional.
Let's go Bear. Tailed by McDaniels. Gafford!
What is up today, Dallas Mavericks fans, MFFLs? It is victory day again. Your Dallas Mavericks defeated the Minnesota Timberwolves, the third seed Minnesota Timberwolves, to take a 3-0 series lead in the Western Conference Finals. Final score, Dallas Mavericks 116, the Minnesota Timberwolves 107. Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, PJ Washington. The list can continue to go on. This is a game with some drama. This is a game that you saw some momentum up and down, and especially the flow of the game. We're talking about some unfortunate injuries to a guy like Derek Lively, who we're hoping to get back really soon. Obviously, this was a team effort, but at the end of the day, it comes down to, are your superstars going to be your superstars? And that's exactly what they were. That fourth quarter came around, and Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, they took full control of this game. I'm talking about both having 33 points. This was one of those situations where you saw, again, we're talking about a close game. Let's be clear. The Minnesota Timberwolves, they've had their own issues. You can tell they're a young squad. I mean, in the sense of when you're your best player, I'm going to say your best player, Anthony Edwards, who had a nice solid game, I will say, for himself last night. A couple plays here and there. I'm sure he'd like to get back. But when you have a young superstar being the number one guy on that team, you're going to have some growing pains. And this just showed the Dallas Mavericks are an experienced bunch. It's still a young squad, because even though we're talking about having a guy like Kyrie Irving, 32 years old, an NBA champion, a guy that we know his skill set is insane. We're talking about one of the best skill sets, just most skilled players in NBA history. We're talking about a guy like Luka Doncic sitting at 25 years old, who has already done so much in this league. 6 years in the league, rookie of the year, 5-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA first-team player, and to me, should have been MVP this year. And I don't want anybody to have to look back on this season and say, how did we let that one get away from giving a guy an MVP trophy that he fully deserved? Obviously, you can get into the conversations of a Shai Gilgeous. We're talking about a Nikola Jokic who ended up winning another one. But you're talking about a Luka Doncic is a superstar player, and I'm going to say arguably the greatest player in the world. Not just the basketball, the NBA, the league of the NBA, obviously. We're talking about in the entire world. Luka Doncic is that guy. Kyrie Irving is a guy that you know is not afraid of any shot to take. And then when you're adding other guys around in the mix, a PJ Washington, a Derek Jones Jr. who ended up with 11 points last night. And it was a big 11 points, because we know what we get defensively from a PJ Washington. We know what we get defensively from a guy like Derek Jones Jr. When you're getting these contributions from your role players around, especially coming in a starting lineup, and there are also guys that are having some responsibilities, having to take away some of what a Karl Anthony Towns is going to possibly give you, and what an Anthony Edwards is possibly going to give you, having to continue to work and grind, but even adding in something offensively. The Dallas Mavericks are a well-oiled machine right now, and they are one step closer to reaching the NBA Finals. Let's be clear, it's not over yet. I don't want anybody to start to beat their chest and say this thing is over, because yes, easy to say that now. You're talking about a 3-0 series lead, but the series is not over. You have got to come in focused, got to come in ready, and it's pretty much as simple as this. Take care of business in another home game. But before we get going into all that, I want you guys to go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and share. Let me know down below, how did you feel about the game last night? I want to see the horse emoji in the comment section. Drop that for me. I want to see everybody. The Dallas Mavericks are now a team that the rest of the NBA has now had to put their eyes on, because you're talking about the last 4 teams in the NBA playoffs. 2 on the Eastern Conference, 2 in the Western Conference. Everyone is starting to watch. And I just want to say my most important thing, my favorite thing to see, especially when you're having these big games and these late postseason games in the NBA, you're seeing the rest of the NBA players themselves tweeting about, these are some superstar players. You saw so many guys last night talking about Kyrie, Luka Doncic. These are closers. They are special. And you know, when you see the rest of your peers giving love, that has to mean something. These are the guys that are going into battles with you. These are the guys that are going into wars against you. These are the guys that are going to have to face you on any given night. And they know the talent that you have. They know what you possess and the difficulties that you bring having to go up against, I'll say. So the Dallas Mavericks once again defeated the Minnesota Timberwolves 1-6 116, 107 to take a 3-0 series lead in the Western Conference Finals. Let's talk about it a little bit. In 41 minutes for Luka Doncic, 33 points. I believe 10 of 20 on field goals, 5 of 11 from the three-point line. We're talking about a guy with 5 assists, 7 rebounds, and also a big 5 steals. And I mean 5 steals. Luka Doncic was everywhere, being that superstar, top 2, top 3, whatever you want to call the best player in the league. I don't care. Somewhere up there. Showed that he is that guy, and when the postseason comes around, the numbers don't fall off, the effort and the intensity doesn't fall off. It might even ramp up, I'll say, especially. And then talking about a Kyrie Irving in 42 minutes, 33 points himself. I believe 4 assists, 3 rebounds. You're looking at Kyrie Irving to be that guy. When you're looking at, I believe Kyrie Irving shoots 12 of 20 on field goals. This is also a guy, when you're talking about Kyrie Irving, he is so cerebral, and it's almost scary to liken his game to any of these former just superstar players we've seen in the league. But when Kyrie Irving gets into crunch time, you can tell there's a level of comfort. He's not scared of what's going on. It doesn't matter if we're down by 8, we're down by 10, or we're up by 5. You're watching Kyrie Irving, and he has that same attention to detail, and it spreads throughout the rest of the roster, especially when we're talking about a bunch of guys that are 25 and under, from a Daniel Gafford to a Luka Doncic himself, as accomplished as he is in this early part of his career. You're talking about guys like that. Look around to a guy that calls him his mentor in Jaden Hardy. You're looking at Josh Green. You're looking at some of these other guys around this team that can just pick up some steam and some experience from a guy like Kyrie Irving. These are the crunch time moments that you're expecting from your top 2 players. The postseason is all about who's going to step up, who's not afraid of the moment, and who's going to make things happen when it calls for that. Luka Doncic yesterday, I believe Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic combined for 21 points total in the fourth quarter. I believe Kyrie had 14, Luka with 7, and these were we're talking about big moments, because when you're looking at what happened in the game, there were some unfortunate happenings. I'm going to say, you're looking at a guy like Derek Lively, who played a major key role in these wins. All 3 wins, you could say, even more so, because I'm going to give him some credit for this one, because prior to leaving the injury with the unfortunate, which is being called a neck injury, like one of those situations where you're seeing sometimes it's just fluky, inopportune things and unfortunate situations and occurrences, I guess you're going to say. You're looking at a guy like Derek Lively falling to the ground. Karl-Anthony Towns is coming in to try to see where the ball is going to go, a rebound. It was completely inadvertent. It wasn't on purpose, so I'm not going to call Karl-Anthony Towns a dirty player or anything. But it was also just very unfortunate, because not too long prior before that, you're talking about Karl-Anthony Towns driving to the basket, Derek Lively trying to attempt to defend the shot, contest the shot, and he catches a knee to the lower man region, I'll say, which no man wants to get hit in, and he's down for a little bit trying to get himself back together. And then not too far after, you see a guy like Derek Lively just trying to make a play, falls to the ground, and unfortunately Karl-Anthony Towns comes in, knee to the back of the head, the neck, whatever it was, being called a neck strain up to this point. It's just very unfortunate, and we're going to see exactly what comes back. But Derek Lively is very key to this rotation, because I'm going to call him pretty much that 6th starter. I don't call him, he's not a 6th-man role or anything like that. I'm going to say Derek Lively is that 6th starter. Daniel Gafford can be that 6th starter. Whoever you want to, I guess you want to make them interchangeable. But Derek Lively is very important. I believe, 6 points? He has a couple rebounds. We're talking about a block shot in the quick time that he was in this game. We are going to need him going forward. But when you have those bad, I guess you want to say those unfortunate occurrences in games like that, especially in a big serious game, we're talking about Game 3 of the Western Conference Finals. You know how important this is for the rest of the team, because you're now trying to bring yourself a little bit closer to reaching your first NBA Finals together as a unit. You're going to have guys that step up, take over, and control the situation. That is exactly what Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving did. And you know, one thing is for sure, Luka Doncic is going to talk his talk. Especially, Luka says many times, we're talking about in post games and just interviews in general, he tries not to talk to guys too much if they're not really giving it to him. But as soon as you start to give him a little bit, which we've seen, Rudy Gobert, a couple cheap shots last night. I'm going to call them cheap shots. I'm not going to call him dirty, but they were just some cheap shots. You start getting the intensity of a postseason game. And again, the biggest thing I always say about the regular season and the postseason, the difference. You're talking about in the regular season, you may be playing a good team to a bad team night by night. You play back-to-backs. You might be playing the Magic one night, then you're playing the Atlanta Hawks another night. You never know. So these numbers, I always say, don't get too bogged down on what the statistics will show from a regular season. Don't get too bogged down in some of the results of these regular season games, because there are lots of contextual things that people like to leave out. You get to the postseason, it's all about game planning and matchmaking for one specific team for at the bare minimum a 4-game series. I'm talking about throughout the entire NBA. That's what it's about. So now it's about adjustments. You can find out what players can pay attention to detail, what coaches are able to see adjustments they need to be made and actually put them into the game plan. And that's what this series has come down to. You talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves, a young team. I believe Anthony Edwards last night ends up with 26 points. It was a nice shooting game. I believe 11 of 24 on field goals. But a guy like that being more aggressive, it's going to help their situation, because you saw prior to the game, Anthony Edwards talks about he's going to be aggressive. He's going to take lots of shots. Just be ready for lots of shots to be taken. And he did not let that down, because one thing you're going to say, when you need your superstar players, even if you go down swinging, that's what you want to do. You want to go down swinging. You can't just go down and just say, okay, you know what, I was very passive. I'm sure Anthony Edwards has some games he would like to take a few more shots, because you're talking about a Karl Anthony Towns who is not playing the best ball right now. I believe 14 points last night, 11 rebounds statistically. But you're talking about a guy, what was it, 0 of 8, 0 of 7 from the three-point land, something like that. You're talking about a guy in Karl Anthony Towns. Obviously, he's a former #1 overall pick. He's been the face of that Minnesota Timberwolves franchise for some years now, prior to Anthony Edwards being there. But then you're looking at a guy like that and just saying, it seems the moment is too big for him. Because one thing you're going to see in the postseason, especially, I will give Jason Kidd a lot of credit for this. It seems when the postseason rolls around, he ramps up, I guess you want to say, the attention to detail. Because we knew Jason Kidd, his playing career, this is a guy that's very cerebral. His IQ is off the roof, through the roof, I'm going to say. And then you're looking at a guy like Jason Kidd, once again, he's going to be able to kind of figure out what are guys good at, what are guys not good at. Let's take away this, because one thing I'll give the Minnesota Timberwolves a lot of credit for so far in this series is they've had a different guy step it up game by game. We can talk about some of his legendary games in quotations for every specific player. Talking about game 1, Jaden McDaniels goes off. Game 2, you saw what Naz Reid was doing from the three-point line. And then last night, you have some weird plays by a guy like Kyle Anderson. Some big shots, I'm gonna say. These are shots that Kyle Anderson is out there game by game during the regular season. These are shots that probably don't fall. But the postseason, things like this happen. So what happens? You need everybody else to lock in. And this is where I'm going to give some credit to just the rest of the guys around. Like I said, a PJ Washington, 16 points, 8 rebounds. You're looking at Derrick Jones Jr., like I said, play some great defense. You're looking at a guy like, I'll give a little bit of credit to some guys like Josh Green coming off the bench and just giving those hustle moments. Jaden Hardy coming there and hitting a couple tough shots, especially one attacking the basket right to the rim. Should have been an and one in my personal opinion, and knocking down the shot, and then we just staying engaged. We're letting some of these other guys get involved, be in the mix, and that's going to be very important for the Dallas Mavericks going forward into what is hopefully an NBA Finals run. So this is going to be something to keep your eyes on. But last night, Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, that's what it comes down to. 33 points apiece, 66 points total, and I believe the 21 points that they scored altogether, combined themselves in the fourth quarter, was 1 point more than what the Minnesota Timberwolves scored in general. So this is just something to keep your eyes on going forward. But as a Dallas Mavericks fan, this is exciting. It's an exciting time to be a fan of this team. And a guy that deserves a little bit of credit. It wasn't a perfect game. It wasn't an amazing game by any stretch. But there was an amazing final stretch of game in the fourth quarter, late in the fourth quarter by him. Daniel Gafford ends up with only 5 points, but this is a guy, when you saw what he was bringing, I believe 29 minutes, obviously things are going to change when a guy like Derek Lively, like I said, it's a two-headed monster. That's how we've been running this thing pretty much with Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford, the combination at the center position. When Derek Lively leaves the game, all of a sudden I felt myself just become very nervous, because Daniel Gafford has the qualities that he has, and he's very physical, he's athletic. He's not the most agile guy, I'm going to say, when you're comparing it to what Derek Lively has seen to bring as he's developed and gotten better and better and progressed as the season has gone on. So one thing I was nervous about, who's going to come in here? Excuse me. You see a guy like Maxi Kleber, who's not in here in the rotation right now, coming back from that shoulder separation, I will say, who hopefully will have if the Mavericks go ahead and handle business next game in the NBA Finals. But a guy like Maxi Kleber, you didn't have him. He has his limitations sometimes, but I will say that's more of a thing we become more secure with than throwing Dwight Powell back in the mix. We obviously had known Dwight Powell has been here, 10 years with the Dallas Mavericks. time has flown, obviously. Come in with that trade, the Rajon Rondo trade in about 2014, coming in as a rookie and part of that deal, and being here the entirety of this time, we've seen he was the starter with the Luka Doncic for a few seasons up to this point. And the last time the Dallas Mavericks were at the Western Conference Finals, I'm going to say that was the difference to me in that Golden State Warriors series, because if you're looking at it, the Mavericks were very much involved in some of these games. But what happened? A guy like Kevon Looney was taking advantage of a guy like Dwight Powell. He's a very good locker room guy. He's a community guy. Everybody loves him personally. But we're talking about the NBA playoffs. You need all your dogs, you need all your horses. And Dwight Powell, he came in there, he didn't completely mess the bed or anything and ruin the complete flow of the game. But you could tell the Minnesota Timberwolves, when Derek Lively left the game, they made it a real focus to attack the basket, go after whoever was going to be under there. Because even if it's a Daniel Gafford and you feel like he has some rim protection capabilities, obviously, which he does, you now know they have one main big man. If we can get him into foul trouble, if we can cause him some issues, we are going to make them a little bit weaker. And if we have a Dwight Powell out there, we're really attacking the basket. And that's what you saw. Jason Kidd, at certain points, you saw him trying to go small ball because he wasn't really sure how to handle this situation, not having a guy like Derek Lively back there to run, because that's what makes the Mavericks so dangerous. You have Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively in there, interchangeable. You're always going to have some kind of big man, lob threat, defensive presence on the interior. But one thing you saw, Daniel Gafford, I'm going to give him some credit for just because of some of the mistakes earlier on in the game. You're seeing as the flow. First of all, let's talk about one major one. I'm going to say we have got to be smarter. And I don't care if you have Derek Lively still behind you or with you, whatever it is. You cannot have a foul. I believe Daniel Gafford has 2 fouls right before halftime. The Dallas Mavericks take a shot. The Minnesota Timberwolves, make a rebound the ball. Rudy Gobert and Daniel Gafford, with, I believe, less than a second, it was about 0.8 seconds, he reaches in on Rudy Gobert, picks up his 3rd foul with less than a second before halftime. So now I'm sitting here thinking, are we going to be in trouble because now he's in foul trouble? You can't have these mental lapses, especially in the postseason. But it did not come back to bite us, because one thing happens, you have guys, again, talk about a Luka Doncic, a Kyrie Irving, a PJ Washington, some of these other guys, like Jaden Hardy in stretches, Derrick Jones Jr., everybody just continued to work, and it allowed Daniel Gafford to find his footing. Because obviously, and I'll say another mistake I saw pretty much that happened I want to say from that third quarter, a little bit a stretch of the third quarter, when the Minnesota Timberwolves start kind of keyed in, and I'm going to say this happened when you saw Anthony Edwards big posterizing dunk on Daniel Gafford, which is gonna happen. I'm gonna laugh about that per se, just for the simple fact, when you're a rim protector, when you're a shot blocker, you're going to get got sometimes. That's how it happens, because when you're being aggressive, you're going to have guys, you're going to get guys that are uber talented, very talented. And we know Anthony Edwards, his athleticism is through the roof itself. So he comes in there, attacks the rim heavily. You can tell Daniel Gafford, one thing I'll say he needs to get better at, in my opinion, is stepping up earlier. I understand you don't want to give up the lob threat potentially to a guy like a Karl-Anthony Towns, a Naz Reid, a Rudy Gobert, but you have got to show that you are there sometimes before the ball handler can get into his full motion and rotate and rhythm of a drive to the basket. And he kind of waited for a second, and here you see Anthony Edwards takes off and puts him through the rim. But I'm going to give him some attention to say, again, just step up earlier, be more, I guess you want to say detailed, detailed oriented. We're talking about a Daniel Gafford. When it's going to come to protecting the rim and just being that presence, I want him to be quicker with his decision making. You'll see him sometimes he'll wait a little bit, and that allows the ball handler to attack the basket and get to the rim way quicker than a guy like Daniel Gafford. But this is something I believe we're going to watch film. They're going to see what the errors were, and they're going to fix them. But Daniel Gafford, that final 3-4 minute stretch of the fourth quarter, we're talking about a couple big blocks. Ends up with 3 blocks in his game, a couple big blocks, and Luka Doncic. What I love about Luka and Kyrie, when you help them out on defense, they're going to come look for you some easy, simple touches and baskets on the other end. And we come down to the other end after a big block on Mike Conley drive, I believe. Luka Doncic comes down there and throws Daniel Gafford a quick lob, one hand, puts it down, and shows that fire while he's on the ground, just letting everyone know, this is our time. I'm locked in. The rest of my guys are locked in. Let's wrap this thing up. It was just great basketball to see from a team aspect, and hopefully the Dallas Mavericks can continue this going forward into Game 4 on Tuesday. Another key thing we're going to see in post-game, Luka Doncic, they're having a conversation obviously in post-game, and he's being asked about, what exactly did Kyrie Irving tell you? What is the conversation? Luka kind of gives a conversation, a quick briefing on a conversation he had, I believe, when he says the Mavericks are up 9 points at this point. The game is pretty much under control. And he comes to the sideline. He says, I'm tired, very tired. And Kyrie Irving tells him, he says, Kyrie Irving responds with, that's how it's supposed to be. Because one thing is for sure, and Luka says it helps calm him down, because at the end of the day, sometimes you're going to be thinking in your head, why am I so exhausted? Oh man, we need this. Maybe I need this. I have a little. And you're talking about guys that are experienced. The Kyrie Irving, he lets him know this is how it's supposed to be. If you're not exhausted by the end of the game, you did not put in the full effort that you needed to. This is the postseason. This is late in the postseason. We're talking about in the conference finals with a chance to go to the NBA finals. I want everybody giving their 1,000% effort the entire time, because that sometimes is going to come down to one possession, two possessions in some of these when you start facing off against more equal talent. This is not the regular season where you're playing against a bad team where you can just blow them out by 20, 30, sit your guys early on in the game. Some of these games are going to come down to the last minute, and that's what it seemed that for the Dallas Mavericks have done the entirety of these 3 wins. We're talking about a top 1, top 2 team in clutch, I believe was compared to throughout the entire NBA this regular season. And that's obviously a lot of that's going to go to having a Luka Doncic and a Kyrie Irving. But I believe the Dallas Mavericks, this lineup, since pretty much the trade deadline, the Daniel Gafford, the PJ Washington acquisitions, you're looking at once the rotation was actually solidified, which is why I have a little bit to talk about when it comes to who could potentially be our opponent in the next round if the Dallas Mavericks handle business. These games don't matter, because those games don't matter, because now this is an entirely different team. 26-5, I believe, is the rotation of the record for this rotation once it became solidified. That is nothing to ignore. The Dallas Mavericks are a serious squad. They're a serious team, and there's a lot to be excited about going forward. In general, not even just this season, but going forward. Once again, your Dallas Mavericks have defeated the Minnesota Timberwolves 116-107 in Game 3 of the NBA Finals to take a 3-0 series lead. I believe I saw a stat that showed any team that goes up 3-0 in a playoff series usually, I believe, wins 154-0. That's the record. So never lost. So hopefully you're able to come in with the same attention to detail and put this team down while you still can. Don't give them any chance to breathe or feel like they have any chance to make in the game, just create any momentum for themselves. Game 4 will be Tuesday, tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. Central Time. This is going to be a game for the Dallas Mavericks to have another another home opportunity to send these fans out happily. Dallas Mavericks fans, I send them home happily, prepare everybody for the next round, which will be the NBA Finals. And we'll see where all the cards fall, because there's some talent in the Eastern Conference, obviously, as we already know. So I appreciate you guys for all the support. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and share. Let me know how you guys feel about this team. Who do you feel is the MVP of last night? Obviously, we can talk about Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. Who's one of the unsung heroes, I'll say? It might not be talked about nationally, but let me know who you felt was one of the key aspects to this victory for the Dallas Mavericks. Not Kyrie, not Luka Doncic. Let me know down below. I appreciate you guys for all the support. The Dallas Mavericks, once again, Game 4 will be tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. Central Time. The perfect opportunity for the Dallas Mavericks to close this thing out at home in front of the home crowd. So go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and share. Again, as always, go Mavs, and enjoy the rest of your day.